You too, man. And I call this meeting of your Newark City Council order, May 16th, 7 p.m. Janine, please call the roll.
Mr. Hauser.
Here.
Mr. Labutus.
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
Here.
Mr. Marmy.
Present.
Mr. Rath. Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Mr. Barker.
Here.
Ms. Blind. Present. Mr. Harris.
Here.
Ms. Hollinger.
We have 7 here or present this evening. Next on the agenda is the invocation. If you please stand. Mr. Harris.
Bow our heads. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. You allowed us to live. Thank you for the beautiful weather you've given us. We ask you, Lord, to help us as we conduct our business. Help us to make the right decisions and do what's right and pleasing in your sight. We ask you, Lord, to be with our country. We ask you, Lord, to bless all those who are less fortunate than we are. We ask you all these things in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry. Remain standing, take your hat off, and we'll be ready to go. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have caucus. That's the time for council to discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight. Do we have anything, Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to excuse Mr. Rath, Mr. Labutus, and Ms. Holly.
Motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Lang. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. That passes. Thank you. Anything else for caucus tonight? Next, we have the minutes of our May 2nd, 2022 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those? Motion by Mr. Barker, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have one appointment this evening. We have Mayor Hall appointing Eddie Hunt to the City of Newark Board of Zoning Adjustment. Term begins immediately to fill the term of a past member and will expire December 31st, 2022. Mayor?
Just a very good person. We had someone that had to step off the board because of just commitments and trying to make all the meetings. Eddie was the zoning inspector for the city of Heath for more than 7 years. So obviously it gives him a lot of credibility there. He's a licensed real estate agent and he did work for HRJL Architects before that for many years. So we think it'll be a nice addition and everybody on the committee certainly welcomes him and is happy he said yes.
Sounds good.
You'll be the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have 2 reports tonight from standing committees, one from finance and one from service. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Under reports from city officials, we have 2 tonight. One from our auditor, Ryan Bubb, the operating report for the period ending April 30th, 2022, and Brenda Cooper, our tax administrator, the income tax revenue reports for the period ending April 30th, 2022. Without objection, those will be received and filed. We have no communications this evening. Next on the agenda, we have comments from citizens. There are 2 sections for comments. One is now and one is after the legislation. This is not a debate or a question and answer period with council. This is just your chance to be heard. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and I'll call you up in order. And then again, there's another chance after the legislation. Sir? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? If you want to raise your hand now. Okay. Again, there's another chance. Go ahead, sir. If you'll give us your name and address for the record.
I am Christopher Wills, 577 Bridgefield Road. And I'm here today to ask the council to consider filing and ask if there are any funds available for COVID relief. I am a long COVID patient. I've been sick for about 17 months. I've seen several doctors and I've gotten a little somewhere and I came a long way, but I'm still not there. And I've had to go get a loan just to consolidate some of my medical bills, and they're still coming in. And there are, long COVID is real, man. There's a lot of people out here that's going to contract this virus, that's going to deal with this. And I'm asking that it be recognized and possibly there be some funds available to our local hospital. I've talked to doctors from the Cleveland Clinic, from Mount Carmel, from everywhere. And I just feel like I need to be able to go to my local home hospital and get the answers I'm looking for that I haven't got. I realize that costs money. I work at Denison University. I have health, I have a good job. I have health insurance. But even with that, it's expensive. I'm a single father. You know, and with that, I just like to thank you for listening.
Thank you. Any comment about his jersey?
I like.
Ma'am? Jeff Harris is a Browns fan.
Rochelle Bolden Smith, 232nd Byron Court. One of the major reasons I came tonight was because of the service committee rule changes. And we spent a good deal of time today looking at trying to figure a lot of that out. And I kind of feel we sped over that quite a bit. And I'm hoping that there are going to be opportunities for the public to get more information, because I kind of feel some of it is a little obscure. And I'm hoping that there's an opportunity for more public comment on some of the rules that are being considered. Is that going to be voted in tonight completely, or is that it?
I caught most of what you said, but which one are you talking about?
On the service bill, the first item
On the committee tonight?
on the committee.
Okay.
Was 22-17 was voted on before anybody had a chance to comment. And I had a lot of, I had been questioning a number of things because I felt that they weren't totally clear in terms of the implications on public. And I'm hoping that there's an opportunity to do that. I'm also not sure because it's being expedited whether that's going to be an option.
That one I'll be on tonight.
That's not on tonight. It will be
Will not be
going
voted
for
on
a second
tonight.
reading.
They'll be.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to ordinances on the second reading. There are none. I'm going to go to ordinances on the first reading, 22-15.
Ordinance number 22-15 by Mr. Barker, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Harris, and Ms. Blind, an ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 137 North Vernon Avenue, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of newly annexed property to single-family residence, RL, Low Density District, zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
This will go to the planning commission, should be for June 14th, and then should be back to council to vote around first meeting of August, August 1st. Okay. Next, we'll have 22-16.
Ordinance number 22-16 by Mr. Barker, Mr. Martin, Mr. Harris, and Ms. Blind, an ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property generally described as 91 to 93 Clinton Street, City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio, from that of TFR, two-family residence district, to MFR, multifamily residence district, zoning code of the City of Newark, Ohio.
22-16 will also be going to the planning commission at the same time, June 14th, and also then back to council, the first meeting in August to be voted on. Next, we'll go on to resolutions on the second reading, 22-37.
Resolution number 22-37 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Mr. Harris, and Ms. Blind, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
You've heard the second reading of 22-37. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy,
make a motion to adopt resolution 22-37.
motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Lyon. Is there any discussion on 22-37? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Hauser,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind. Yes. Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
22-37 passes 7-0. Next on the second reading, we have 22-39.
Resolution number 22-39 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Harris, Ms. Blind, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Hauser, Mr. Labutus. A resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service of the City of Newark, Ohio to proceed with the steps necessary to designate a portion of Locust Street in the downtown area as Gerald K. McLean Way.
Heard the second reading of 22-39. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Harris.
I'm making a motion to adopt 22-39.
Second.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion on 22-39?
Mr. President,
Mr. Harris.
I'd like to make an amendment to 22-39. I would like to change Third Street from Locust Street to Railroad Street. And we'd like to change it to Daniel DeLauder Way.
Second by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote on the amendment.
Mr. Hauser,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Ms. Blind. Yes. Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
22-39 has been amended. Now, make that 22-39A. Is there any discussion on 22-39A? I do have something I'd like to read from Mr. Rath, the Service Committee Chairman. He said, "I fully endorse this legislation and am so grateful for the many public-private partnerships that take place here in our city. Without these partnerships, many projects would not be possible, and Jerry McLean and the McLean Company have played a major role in many of these projects. I urge everyone to support this legislation." Mr. Rath cannot be here tonight, but he asked me to read that, so I did the best I could on that. Any other discussion on 22-39A? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind. Yes. Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
22-39A passes 7-0 as amended. Next, we move on to resolutions on the second reading of 22-40.
Resolution number 22-40 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Mr. Harris, Ms. Blind, and Mr. Hauser. A resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to submit an application to the Ohio Department of Public Safety Office for federal fiscal year 2023 Ohio Traffic Safety Grants Programs, Selective Traffic Enforcement Program, STEP, and the Impaired Driving Enforcement Program, IDEP.
You've heard the second reading of 22-40. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy.
make a motion to adopt resolution 22-40.
Motion by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Lang. Is there any discussion on 22-40? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind. Yes. Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
22-40 passes 7-0. Next on the second reading, we have 22-41.
Resolution number 22-41 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Mr. Harris, and Ms. Blind. A resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to submit an application to the Ohio Department of Public Safety Office for federal fiscal year 2022 American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, Law Enforcement Violence Reduction and Staffing Grant.
You've heard the second reading of 22-41. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy.
make a motion to adopt resolution 22-41.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Lang. Is there any discussion on 22-41? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind. Yes. Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
22-41 passes 7-0. And finally, on the second reading, we have 22-43.
Resolution number 22-43 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind. Project scope includes pavement reconstruction, vertical profile improvement, installation of turn lanes, and reconstruction of intersection at Thornwood Drive and West Main Street.
For the second reading of 22-43, what is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Harris.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 22-43.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Harris, second by Ms. Blind. Is there any discussion on 22-43? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang, Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
22-43 passes 7-0. And finally, tonight, we move on to resolutions on the first reading, 22-45.
Resolution number 22-45 to expedite by Mr. Marmy and Mr. Barker, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
22-45, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on resolution 22-45.
To waive the 2-day reading by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Lang. Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a payout and we always want to get the funds to the employee as quickly as possible. Plus, we have overtime funds that need to be into their account so that we can pay overtime to the fire department.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Janine, please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind. Yes. Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
2-day reading rule has been waived. Mr. Marmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt resolution 22-45.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmy, second by Mr. Lang. Any other discussion on 22-45? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
Mr. Labutus, Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind. Yes. Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger.
22-45 passes 7-0. And finally, tonight, we have 22-46.
Resolution number 22-46 by Mr. Marmy and Mr. Barker, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
And 22-46 will be held at our next meeting on June 6th. And that completes the legislation tonight. I appreciate your attention. Thank you. Okay, once again, our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Again, this is not a debate or a question and answer with council. This is just your opportunity to be heard or state your opinion. Do we have anybody that would like to speak? Please raise your hand. Tim, come on up. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay, anybody else? We got one more after you.
Tim Waldron, 167 South State Street. I just want to say, tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m., it will be probably the last charter committee meeting. And I just want to make sure it go on the record.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Sir.
My name is Richard Coral Hill Jr. And trying
Okay,
to
your address.
homeless shelter, St. Vincent,
Okay, thank you.
right now. This stack of papers is the IRS this year, all papers from this year. I'm dealing with identity theft, fraud, a lot of forgery, falsification of records, copy and paste of records, job and family, insurance fraud. And I filed complaints, I filed grievances, I filed everything I can possibly file, civil protection orders. No one seems to be able to help me. So I was just wondering if you guys can maybe point me in the right direction. Because there's a lot of bad things going on behind this. And the whole city basically knows about it. The police officers know, everyone knows who I am, the city knows, and I'm just wondering why this is going on.
Thank you. Stick around for a minute afterwards if you will.
Thanks, sir.
And, okay. Anyone from administration this evening? Mr. Bonner. Or I'm going to hold you to my 5-minute rule. No, there's no laughing.
I'll let you do it to start the clock, okay?
On slide 18.
Ready? Go.
Well, good evening, everyone. Mr. President, members of council, I appreciate you allowing me a few minutes to give a very positive update on a brownfield site that we've had in the city. It's a long-time brownfield site in town on South 21st Street. It's referred to as the quality chemical site. For the past year, since approximately May of 2021, there's been a significant development take place at the site. The city has been very successful in getting some much needed cleanup at this site accomplished. This success story is the direct result of a very cooperative effort among myself and the Department of Development, Joe Paul in the Property Maintenance Department, and Mr. Bruce Gossett with the Newark Fire Department. And of course, the Property Maintenance and Fire Department are under the direction of Mr. Tim Hickman. We all worked directly together with both the Ohio EPA and the US EPA to accomplish the removal and disposal of very hazardous contaminants at this brownfield site. Real quick, here's an aerial where the property is located. The top left corner, you'll see the diagonal railroad tracks. Those tracks going left to right intersect South 21st Street. Directly south or below the railroad tracks is Packaging Corporation of America. You may all be familiar with that. And then just below that, you'll see outlined in a yellow highlighter is the actual property that we're referring to. And then below that is also a small strip shopping center. Here's a little excerpt from the US EPA's report. At the top, you'll see the quality chemical site is listed for removal and disposal. The location of the site is specifically 209 and 217 South 21st Street. I'm sorry, in Licking County. Again, to the north of the property is Packaging Corp of America that manufactures corrugated cardboard packaging materials, and directly to the south of the property is the strip mall. The site description, or a little bit of historical information. There are three structures, by the way, on the site. There's a small house, there's a warehouse, and then an adjoining awning, three-sided covered structure. But the house at 209 was used as a private residence from 1956 to 1981, for storage of janitorial supplies for sale from 1982 to 1994, and then as an office from 1997 through 2004. The commercial building at 217 South 21st was used as a janitorial supply company from 1970 to 1996, and a combination of warehousing and water-based coating manufacturing from 97 through 2004. Quality Chemical was a sole proprietorship and ceased operations in 2004, and the site has basically been vacant since. All the buildings on the property are still unoccupied. Commercial buildings, approximately 8,288 square feet, with an additional 1,800 square foot outdoor awning, where we found materials as well. In small houses, about 900 square feet. The description of the threat that was identified by the US EPA says the EPA is responding to the threat, and I highlighted threat because there was no evidence of anything that was spilled out of these containers. It was just a threat of a hazardous substance to the environment posed by abandoned steel drums and containers left in the interior and the exterior of the building. The initial investigation site included the presence of flammable and corrosive hazardous waste, metals, including arsenic, cadmium, and chromium, and ammonia. The response actions by the US EPA were to send in their rapid response team to deal with this situation. And ladies and gentlemen, you do not get a rapid response team from the US EPA unless it's a very critical situation. Operations identified 479 drums. Those are 55-gallon steel drums on the site. In addition, there was 111 plastic totes, about the same size as a 55-gallon drum. This number was not inclusive of approximately 5 pallets of miscellaneous small containers, less than 55 gallons. Hopefully that paints a picture, somewhat of a picture of what we were dealing with. This is the timeline. Again, going back to May of last year, the city got involved, the fire department performed some inspections of the properties and referred them to some local building code officials. That's where they found the stacks of drums and totes. In July of last year, there was a request for assistance made by myself from the city to Ohio and US EPAs. In June, a site walk was completed by the EPA along with myself and some other Ohio EPA reps with the US EPA. July 11th, the site assessment and sampling was completed. 10 days later, The enforcement investigators from the US EPA traveled to Ohio to conduct personal responsibility interview with the property owners. August 30th, an action memorandum was signed, which allowed an agreement for the US EPA to come in and do this cleanup of the site. In September 29th, there was a site walkthrough with the city officials, the emergency response team, and START, which stands for the Superfund Technical Assessment Response Team. It's the official team that's going to be overseeing the project. In October, also the site contractor, that's the contractor that's actually going to do the removal and disposal of materials, mobilized on site. In January 20th, an action memo amendment was put in because they needed some more money to put toward this project. The bottom bullet line was completion demolition was estimated around the week of February 14th. We actually completed very close to that deadline. I believe it was like the 21st of February. Very, very aggressive timeline. Following just some pictures. If you're on 21st Street looking at the site, that's what it looked like. That's the front office space in front of the warehouse. This was what I call three-sided with a covered, steel covered awning that adjoined the main warehouse building. You can see there's one example of the 55-gallon drums, which is very haphazardly stored and left on the site by the owners. Another shot, the same. Wow. The picture on the left, where you see a couch, that's what Mr. Joe Paul and I found when we did one of our initial investigations. The rear of the warehouse had a big overhead door at a loading dock, and we looked in and we saw the couch. We preliminarily saw out in the backyard signs of homelessness taking place, and they had ultimately moved inside the building, in and amongst all these hazardous chemicals and containers. On the right side, you can see where those totes are stacked up to the ceiling, floor to ceiling. Very dangerous situation. And they were probably starting fires to keep warm. And oh, by the way, the flash point on these materials is around 60 degrees Fahrenheit. More of the same as far as the storage of materials in the building. Very, very dangerous situation. This picture you'll see on the right-hand side, again, still floor to ceiling, but to the left, you'll see it's clearing. It's the US EPA and their contractors starting to make a dent in this, get the product identified, and get it stored and ready for transportation to a disposal site. This is a very encouraging picture. You'll see a lot of the barrels and totes are no longer in the warehouse. But there are still a few black drums back where the men are in the hazmat suits. We're making real good progress. So this is just behind the building. They had to create a storage site in order to get these 600 containers out. They had to be labeled and identified before they could be put on the transport trucks. So you see they laid some plastic. Well, first they graded it off level, put some plastic down in case there was any spillage. Then put a limestone base down to get a nice level surface that they could run forklifts and get the pallets staged. You can see why I'm just giving this to you now. None of us wanted people going around on this site. We didn't want anything that would attract attention to this. It was just too dangerous. Another view, looking at the storage of the containers waiting to go out in the warehouse in the background. These are just some vials that they found that also had some contaminants located in them. They were just haphazardly stored around the warehouse. This is a picture. I'm going to have you concentrate on the blue shaded area to make sure there weren't any buried materials, any buried metal drums and so forth. They brought in an instrument that we would all look at as like a metal detector, okay? And they went over the entire property trying to see if there was any signs that there might be buried metal containers. The good news is there was one small area. It's one of those smaller red square with a gray area. They did find something there. What they found was, as they dug, the picture to the right is where they dug down. The picture to the left, you'll see it like a flat surface with dirt on it. It was about a 1/2-inch steel plate. Nobody knows why or how it was there, or what it was used for, but that's what gave them the hit on that metal detector. Thank goodness, again, there were no underground barrels or containers buried on the site. Again, another very positive site. Most all the cleanup is done. The yellow barrels that you see, they actually had to take the old 55-gallon containers, and they put them inside of these plastic containers. That's how they safely hauled down the road. 600 of them. Another site, a little bit of work going on in the wintertime. That's where the storage transport barrels were stored. Again, almost done on the inside. These gentlemen here in the yellow hazmat suit, the man in the center or to the left, see the black substance on his suit? Some of these chemicals have been around for so long that they went from a liquid, they were going to more of a solid and going to a sludge. These guys on some of these containers had to literally hand clean these containers out before they could ship. Finally, this is pretty much what it looks like today. Everything's been removed, properly disposed of under the direction of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, we had no idea what was in those containers. Thank goodness there was no fire situation. We would not have known how to fight the fire. The good news is everything has been properly taken care of. We did not have a serious situation take place, and we're in a very good place now. That's the final picture there. This is what it cost. They had budgeted $805,000. To date, there's $766,000 spent. So the remaining budget has about $38,000 left in it. All of this work was done at no expense to the city of Newark, Ohio. So next time you see your US or Ohio EPA, give them a tip of the hat. I will give you one more caveat to this. This same site actually has some underground contamination as well. And I'm currently working on an application with the state of Ohio. They put money in for brownfield and demolition cleanup in this year's budget. My application went in April 30th. I'm hoping to get that application approved. So now we can start attacking what's under the ground. And Mr. President, that will conclude. Thank you.
Bob. Very, very nice. Thank you so much. And I assume we don't know where any of these barrels came from or how they got there. And I'm assuming that you're doing something to make sure that doesn't happen again.
The US EPA sent a team in and they interviewed the property owner to get to the bottom of some of that. And that's still a report yet to come.
Very good. Thank you. And since Mr. Motter has taken all the time, is there anyone else in the city, no one else in the city officials can probably speak now? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Not city officials, right?
I just wanted to
No,
him whether.
no. Well, Director Moore.
Just in reference to the comment about the 2217 legislation, I think there's some misunderstanding in that is all legislation that is already passed through this council. So what AM Legal does is they publish our codified ordinance. When we change that, and I think the last time it was updated was 2020. Periodically, they do legislation so that they can take everything that's been passed since 2020 and update the code online. So I'm sure that the people who regularly attend council had already had a chance to speak to everything that they're updating because it's already been passed. So with that, I'll pass.
Thank you. That's much better clarification than I thought. Mayor Hall?
I'll thank Director Motter. Certainly, he's kind of shy about it, but he spent a lot of time, worked with US EPA so that they had a local person to talk to, and I would say without Mark, it probably wouldn't back alone. So thank you very much, Director Motter. With that, I'll pass.
And I like to add my thanks too. That's a great job. Mr. Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to thank Director Moore, but pretty impressive there in terms of being able to put all those pieces in line and clean that up. So very impressive. Thank you for that. I want to thank Joe Paul for cleaning up the issue of property maintenance for me. I also want to thank everyone involved in the East End cleanup this past Saturday morning. I was involved in that, and it was a great turnout and a good success.
Thank you. Mr. Lamb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. First, I'll thank Mr. Moorhead and George Carter for looking at some zoning issues that I had received from a constituent, and also some paving issues. I want to thank Joe Paul as well for jumping on a property maintenance request that I had, and then also wanted to thank Director Rhodes for looking into some questions that came up regarding a couple of our parks, getting some bathrooms open, water fountains turned on, and disc golf basket that went missing over at Flory. So I think Director Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Mr. Marmy?
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to call a finance committee meeting. I also want to thank Director Motter for everything that he's done there. Do you do basements? But no, thank you very much. That is definitely something that is very scary, and I'm glad that it was addressed before it got worse. So thank you very much for that. With that,
Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Mr. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have much tonight. Thank you, Director Moller. I'm glad there was pictures. I didn't really picture it until you showed them. So with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, Director Matter, thank you. That did not look like a fun job. We appreciate everybody in your department and yourself handling that with the EPA at the federal and the state level. And just would like to thank Joe Paul also with a little repeated issue that's happening over in the 3rd Ward with some vacant land. He's getting hopefully that taken care of tomorrow. That I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Ms. Vaughn?
Thank you, sir. Director Motter, thank you so much. I don't think we know exactly what the depth of what's been removed. And I'm grateful for that, because had we, it would have been too late. And so thank you for your research. Thank you for your service, sir. And I'd also like to thank Joe Paul and the street department for getting some paving issues taken care of even now. They're working on some things on Church Street. And I'd also like to thank our law director. She's working very hard on a lot of things and bringing clarity to some things that I know, as one who used to attend these regularly, I didn't understand a lot. And so I'm learning, and I thank you for her service. But I'd like to shift to a second to thank the Newark Police Department. Our citizens are so grateful for you. And I know we have Tim here, but Mr. Hickman, but I don't think that much like what Director Motter has done, I don't think we understand exactly the depth of their service. And so I'd like to thank the South Newark residents for reaching out to them and for, showing support. And I'll tell you, there's more coming. We are for you. We're for the NPD. And I also like to thank the dispatchers. I've heard some really great comments from citizens about the kindness of the dispatchers and how they're taking time just to be sure they have the information correct and making sure that amidst a nervous call, and they're able to give some comfort to the citizens as well. So thank you so much. That's so nice.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. And Mr. Harris?
I need to call a service meeting for June 6th. And also took part in East End cleanup, and I want to thank everybody who got that organized. Mr. Mona, thank you for that. It was really busy in the East End. We got a lot of stuff done. I think truck was about, what, 3/4 full. So that's good stuff. It's a good thing. People get stuff off their houses and stuff. And also, I want to remind everybody, Memorial Day at Cedar Hill at 11 o'clock. I think there's going to be veterans ceremony. It's always a nice ceremony. If you guys can make it out, that's always a good thing. So, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Our next committee meetings will be June the 6th at 5:45. The next full council meeting will be that same evening, the 6th at 7 p.m. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mara. That's a good presentation. Appreciate that. And you were almost at 5 minutes, so that's pretty close. 5 or 6. Okay, with that, now you can ask Mr. Mara. So motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Hauser, second by Ms. Klein. All in favor, probably saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.